Hi there, my name is Nicole Hebert with the Moose Show Journey to Hope team, and this is Voices of Hope.
Jasper. I am a recovering addict, a very grateful addict in recovery. I've been sober now for almost 4 years. I'll be 4 years in September. So I'm going to tell you guys how I got that way, how I got to where I am today. I grew up in I guess you call it a middle class home. Both my parents were together, still together today. There's no prior addiction in my family, no prior major mental health problems, nothing. So, I grew up really good. We had everything that we needed, really close ties with my family. I went to Catholic schools. My elementary school years were really good. It was more when I went to high school. When I went to high school, all of a sudden it was all 6 schools send their kids all to this one school. And it was like a culture shock to go from being this little kid to trying to be a high school, a teenager. And I was heavily involved in sports, very athletic, I had good grades, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, so I was the poster child of a good child, right? I had good grades. I worked hard. I made the high school soccer team. So, I'm the last kid that you would think would get into drugs. However, I did. At 14, I started experimenting, and it was mainly to just fit in, right? So I started experimenting with alcohol and marijuana. By 15, I was addicted to ecstasy, which was crazy. I remember, doing throughout a day, doing 20 pills of ecstasy, not being able to wake up in the morning without it. And then I had somebody give me crystal meth. So I think I was just before I turned 16, I was given crystal meth. And I haven't tried another drug since then. I had that addiction right up until I was 28. I guess just to do a little backstory, my family, at 16, I was 15, 16, I got my first trafficking charge. I realized real young that if I sold the drugs, I'd have more money to buy more drugs, and it was just an endless party. And like I said, it began with just doing it on the weekends, and then all of a sudden I couldn't wake up in the morning. I couldn't go to school without it. After I got arrested, I was held for 2 weeks, and when they let me out and I went back to school and I had no drugs in my system, I had detoxed in jail, my teachers thought I was high and I was dead sober because of the difference in my my behaviors. My parents did try to get help. There was such a lack of supports and such a stigma around addiction, so they didn't really know where to look. They called the school really get her an addictions counselor. The hard thing with a teenager is if I didn't want to go, I didn't have to. So my mom promised me a tattoo at 15. She said, okay, you can get a tattoo if you go see a mental health counselor. And so I got my tattoo and I went and seen this counselor. I followed through, and my mom she tells this story to me now. She went and said, okay, to this counselor, how do we help her? What's going on with her? Is she on drugs? And the counselor, or the mental health worker, told her, well, she's over the age of 14. We can't tell you anything. So, my mom felt really defeated. The school said, try boarding school. But even then, the boarding school, they looked into it, and the boarding school said, if her friends come and pick her up, she can leave. And it was $15,000 for a year there. So, my family said, well, great, we'll put out that money, and then if she leaves, we don't get the money back, and she's, now she's not in school at all. So I think there's such a lack of support around in the beginning of my addiction. And it was so easy for me to get away with it. By the time I was 19, I think I was 18 or 19, I had, met a guy. My parents tried to make these really strict rules, and I just decided, screw it, I'm going to move out. I met a guy that was 16 years older than me, and he had a motorcycle, so I thought he was so cool. And it was like paradise at first, and then, I moved out with him to this really remote location, like way up north. I grew up in Yorkton, so this is far into the bush, and it was great at first until, all of a sudden, like, this is back in the days of flip phones, and, every time I had a cell phone, he would smash it. House phone, smash it. Clocking the kilometers on my car, like, never allowed to leave the house, like, just extremely abusive, like, physically, emotionally, financially, because I wasn't allowed to work. His family was all from there, so anytime I left the house, he knew about it. I remember back then feeling like, like I wasn't on drugs anymore because I couldn't get them because I was stuck in this house, right? And I just felt like nobody cared, like I had no way out. I remember when, he ended up getting arrested, and it was my opportunity to get out, right? And I did, like, called my dad, he came up, we packed up my house, we left. But I remember having panic attacks. So I would have these little panic attacks that, because I wasn't letting him know where I was going. And I think that's from the abuse. I think that's when maybe my PTSD first started. That day though, like, the first chance I had, I was back out using drugs, even though I had been clean for a year or so. The first opportunity I had to go back out and use that, I did. And, I didn't have trauma growing up when I first started using. However, I think that was a little bit of trauma that, okay, this will make it feel better. The drugs will help me not have these panic attacks. And it did. He was so controlling that I decided that, I vowed that no person, but definitely no man, would ever control me again. And so I became the controller. And I think it kind of goes with that hurt people. I just thought, I knew that selling drugs would give me free drugs. So I got into that, and, and I just started doing all sorts of crime. The family ties that I was brought up with, I started to slowly lose them. Like, my family would try to help, but they didn't know how. Like I said, there's such a lack of resources out there. I ended up, I'd get arrested, and then I would call my parents, and I'd be sitting in jail, and I'd be like, hey, I really need a lawyer, like I need bail, I need all this. So I would detox when I would get arrested for a couple weeks, talk to my family, they'd always support me financially to get out. And I'd always have these good intentions. I'm going to get out, I'm going to get a job, I'm going to get, I'm going to do this. And my intentions were always good. However, I didn't know, like, I started using at 14, so I never grew up. My maturity level never grew up. I didn't know how to, get an apartment and keep it. I knew how to get a job. I knew how to make a resume, but I didn't know how to keep that job. 3 months is crazy for me to hold a job. I didn't know how to pay bills. I never had to do that. So sooner or later, or even if life was going good for those 3 months, it's like, okay, I can reward myself. Or, something bad happens, I need to cope with, I need to get drugs to cope with that. So sooner or later, I'd always end up back out using, and it was like an endless, vicious cycle. Get sober for a couple months, start using, go to jail, get out, stay sober for a couple months, and then it just kept repeating. Sorry. I think it was 2016, I was finally arrested in Regina. This time prior to that, I was arrested on like suspicions of selling drugs or, minor possession charges, and I'd always beat those. But in 2016, I was arrested with a lot. And it was like they found cell phones scaled, like they found everything. So I knew this time I was going to go to jail for a long time. I didn't think it was possible to beat it unless on a technicality. So I called my parents and I was like, hey, I really, really need a lawyer. This time's the last time. I even had my auntie, my grandma, everybody tried to help this time. They paid for a fancy lawyer again. I ended up getting out on bail. I was required to live at my auntie's house. My boyfriend didn't get out of jail that time, but I was required to live at my auntie's house, and and I did. I really thought I could do it but only 2 weeks into it, I didn't know how to live by other people's rules. I didn't know how to live by rules. So, and I was so like broken from that relationship where I never wanted anyone to control me, and I never wanted to listen to anybody, that, after 2 weeks of living with her, I took off. Even though that was a safe house, like, why couldn't I get sober then? I ended up taking off. I moved down to Alberta. I figured I could start a new life, I'll run from these charges, and I'll start a new life, I'll get a new job. Like, my intentions were good again. I moved out there because my boyfriend of the time that was still in jail, he was a gang member, and he was from out there. So he said, go live with these guys, they'll help you. One of those guys was a good guy, but as soon as I got out there, he got arrested and went to jail. So all of a sudden I'm living with these other guys, and it became really clear to me that I was being used to make money for them. Like, they wanted me to, because I had been selling drugs, they wanted me to help them make money. And I just, like I said, no one was going to control me again. So I took off from them. I did stay in there was a shelter. It's kind of like a transition house for women. And I did stay there. And I think, this is kind of a big thing for me is, that you get 30 days there, and that's it. And then there's like a lack of support after that. While I was there, they helped me get a job. I actually got 2 jobs. So I was trying to save up some money. I was one of the people that fell through the cracks, because when I came up there, I had no ID, no health card, nothing. I had no fixed address. I couldn't even go, like, I went there and I went to, like, where's the SGI? Well, there is no SGI in Alberta. I went to my bank, I didn't have ID. I tried to get a health card, I had no address. So I was one of these people that fell through the cracks there. I couldn't even go on assistance because I had nothing. I had nothing to say that I am who I say I am. So anyway, so I met this transition house, and I ended up getting 2 jobs. And it was I was gonna get paid in a couple days, and I had a shift. Like, there was a curfew there, so there's a 9 p.m. curfew, and I had a shift where I was working till 10 p.m. So I talked to the day staff and I said, I have this shift till 10. Is that okay? There's no bus running at night. I'll have to walk, and this is in a city that was kind of lots of hills, so it would have been like an hour-long walk. And she's like, yeah, I'll let the evening staff know and whatever. Well, she forgot to let the evening staff know. And when I got there at like 11 p.m. after work, they're like, no, your stuff's packed up in the garage, and you're kicked out, right? Well, I got paid the very next day, and I was like, screw them, they kicked me out. I'm gonna go get high. Like, I was almost 30 days clean, and I was like, I'll just go get high. And I was gonna hurt them by hurting me. I'll get high to hurt them. It's like, I honestly say that the addiction is it's like a problem with the way we think. I had a problem with the way I thought. Anyway, so I went back to using. Obviously, those jobs, I lost those jobs. I ended up on the streets now. I was in Edmonton on the streets for almost a year, in and out of shelters, in and out of, the thing is I didn't know how to receive help from people. I always thought everybody was trying to control me and tell me how to live my life. Those guys that I took an off on, they ended up catching up with me in Edmonton. They found me, and I was kidnapped, I was taken out of town, I was raped and beaten for 3 days. I remember when they dropped me off at like outside of a hospital, and I come in there, and like my face was so messed up on the side, and like obviously I looked strung out because I've been living on the streets for a couple months, and like my whole eyebrow bone was like just swollen, my eye was full of blood, I couldn't see out of it. I remember though how the security guard, and I don't know if it was in my head, but the nurse and the security guard there, like it was just like I wasn't a human being. That's how I felt like I was treated. I came in there, they said they didn't have beds, they didn't have any room for me. They put me into this little closet. Literally there was brooms in there was no bed, there was just a chair. They put me on an IV drip, and there was no buzzer, and they forgot me for 6 hours in there. And I remember just being in so much pain, my body hurt so bad that I couldn't even get up and ask for, I think you guys forgot me. because the drip had finished and they still weren't back. So today, anytime somebody says, if you ever hear that thing, play the tape to the end, that's where, when I want to use, I think about where drugs take me, and that's where drugs take me. Because it was so horrible. I remember the sad country music song on the, on the radio and whatnot. So anyway, so I got better, slowly. I still on the streets. I remember, I used to have like the cell phones, but I'd have like to use Wi-Fi because I had a SaskTel phone before that, and no SaskTel in Alberta. And so I'd use Wi-Fi and I'd, use those texting and calling apps. And I finally got a hold of my parents, and after I had left and kind of screwed them over with all that money that they put out for bail, I think it was like close to $5,000, and close to another $5,000 for the lawyer. So they weren't really talking to me, and I made this promise, I'm gonna come back if I can stay with you, and then for a few days, and then I'll turn myself in. I did end up catching a bus. The buses don't go anymore really into Saskatchewan, but they do go to Saskatoon. So I did take a bus to Saskatoon. I was on the streets there for a few days so I could hitchhike back to Regina. And then my mom was at Costco in Regina, and I remember meeting her in the parking lot. And as soon as I got in her car, I couldn't even keep my eyes open. I had been sleeping with, I was sleeping for an hour because I just couldn't trust where I was. And people tried to help me along the way, but I didn't know how to receive their help. I didn't know how to, I figured everybody wanted something from me. I didn't believe that people would be doing things out of the pure kindness of their heart, right? Everybody had a hidden motive. Anyway, so I get into my mom's car, and, I get home, and I think I slept for a few days, and then, it became clear that, even though I promised to turn myself in, it's a lot easier said than done. And, it became clear that I wasn't going to do that. And it was butting heads with my mom. And even though, like they were trying to help too. And I didn't know how to take that help. I really had this strong belief that the world, was happening to me. All these bad things were happening to me, that I was the victim, and it was everyone else's fault. So yeah, I ended up going back out, back to the streets, and, I ended up back in Saskatoon, which is crazy, and, just on the streets there, and then, hating the world and hating everybody and just running all the time. Like, it's so exhausting, and it's so emotionally exhausting, and being alone. And I just had this day where it was just going really wrong, and the police were raiding a hotel, and a hotel room, and I was there, and I could have ran out the back door, and I gave up. It's like I didn't turn myself in, but I just stayed because I knew that I was just done. And so I went to Pine Grove. They arrested me and sent me to Pine Grove Correctional, and I remember the first couple weeks, well, I don't really remember them because I was sleeping the whole time, but I remember waking up from that and being like, what the hell did I just do? Why am I here? The drugs, like they weren't in my system anymore. So now all those feelings and all the like pain that I had been through was all hitting me at once, and it was too much. I like, since the age of 14, I learned that drugs took pain away, and now I don't have drugs to take the pain away, and it's all hitting me from the age of 14 till now. It's all hitting me. I ended up in there for a few months. I had a huge spiritual awakening, we'll call it. I went and seen an elder. Like, I grew up Christian. I knew of God. I read about him in the book. And, anytime that I would, be in a sticky situation, like, when I was being raped, I begged God, just let me die. If you really existed out there, just let me die. I wanted to die so bad, and, I didn't want to go through another day of it, and he didn't let me die, so I had this hate on for him. There was times when, I'd be in a high-speed chase, and I'd be like, just help me get out of this, and, I'd always be bargaining with him, and if I did get out, it was because I was an amazing driver. It wasn't because God helped me. But if I didn't, and I got arrested or something, it was his fault, right? Because I didn't know how to take the blame for something. I didn't know how to be accountable. So yeah, I went and seen this elder, and I'm like, I'm gonna switch religions. Like, screw this, screw my God and all this. So I told this elder my story, and she she kind of laughed and she said, well, you can't hate something that doesn't exist. So if you hate him that much, then you obviously believe that he exists. And, you know, it is kind of true. And she told me that the problem with me is that, or the problem with the way I pray is that I'm always praying for things that I'm already going to get. Like, I'm praying to get out of jail. Well, you're going to get out of jail, whether it's tomorrow, whether it's in 5 years, you're going to get out. But instead to pray for the tools to change, pray to have guidance to not come back here. And, you know, I thought that was kind of stupid, but I was at this point where, like, I had no way out, you know. I remember sitting in there and being like, you know, I used to get these amazing grades in school. I was a soccer player, and like now I'm 28 years old. I haven't gone to university. You know, I'm lucky to even have a grade 12, but I had screwed up my life with a criminal record so bad that, like, how did I get to this point? You know, I just remember thinking, like, this wasn't supposed to be my future. I didn't come from a family where we go to jail. Anyway, so I did this big thing that she told me to do. I got on my knees and I prayed. And like, I remember, like, just begging for, you know, just help me. Like, this was my Jesus take the wheel moment. I remember crying and, like, my throat hurt, my neck hurt the next day, like, just begging for the tools to change. Like, I don't know what to do anymore. This was a huge surrender point for me. I didn't know what to do anymore. I needed help. And for the first time in my life, I was ready to receive help. So yeah, and then it's crazy because the next day they brought me into video court, and I was being accepted into this program called drug court. And it was in Regina, and I was arrested in Saskatoon, and they didn't have a drug court there. So I was like, you know, I had heard of drug court, but I didn't think it was something that was, you know, going to be in my future. And, you know, and then they said, you're going to have to live at this place, Kate's place, which I kind of argued with them because I'm like, well, I could live at my auntie's. Like, I have family. I'm really grateful today that I got to live at Kate's place because there's something about safe, like having a sober home, like with people. Even though my auntie's house was sober and it was a good home, my auntie was not trained in addictions to know when I'm manipulating, because I know that I can, back then I knew that I could manipulate her. So being sent to Kate's place was amazing. It's crazy though, because as soon as I heard the judge say that you're going to be released, even though I had all those good intentions the night before, as soon as I heard that word release, and this is why I say it's the problem with the thinking, I was back in my unit and I went straight to the phone and I was calling the dope guy. You know, meet me at the courthouse, I'm getting out. Yeah, so I went back to, or they sent me back to Regina to the court. I did get released. It was a Tuesday, they released me. It was actually Halloween. And so they released me, and when they took the handcuffs off me, I was pushed out this door, and Kate's place was right there to pick you up. So I didn't get a chance to see if the dope guy even showed up. I doubt he did, but I didn't get that chance to use, and I've been sober ever since. Yeah, like September 6th was the day I was arrested, so I always count September 7th as my clean day. And yeah, it'll be 4 years in September. I went to drug court, and you know, you're assigned a counselor. I have to live at this place called Kate's Place. And you know, at first I did fight it. I didn't trust it. I didn't know how to receive help. I thought they were all full of shit. There was, you know, other people in the program, and I didn't think that they were, you know, they said, oh, they've got 8 months clean, or they've got 6 months clean, and I didn't believe it, right? And I was very standoffish, looking for the differences in everybody. And it wasn't until my addictions counselor, I went to see her, and we're doing a one-on-one, and you know, she told me a bit of her story, and she had a similar story to me, except in my eyes it was way worse, right? And it's that therapeutic value of somebody, you know, like of an addict helping somebody else. And for me, it was for somebody who's, you know, been through sexual abuse and survived it. And you know, her telling me too was the biggest thing for me. That was the first time I was able to trust somebody to open. Like, I'm gonna get emotional. It was the first time I opened up. She set the way, you know, she set the way for me to open up and be willing to try, you know, somebody else's suggestion, not just Meagan's, right? There was a lot of work. It wasn't like snap, like I'm sober now. There was a lot of work involved. There was a lot of mistakes I made along the way. I do 12-step programs. That had, like, drug court was going to end, You know, it's a 16-month program, and one day it will end, right? So how am I going to stay sober after that? And in the beginning, it was a get out of jail free card, and eventually it just became my way of life, right? Like this, all of a sudden, I think it was when I went to Pine Lodge, because you have to go to a 30-day rehab when you're a drug court participant. And so I chose Pine Grove. They could have sent me to Thorpe, which is like a paid place. And I don't know, I just heard, you know, a lot of people called it Pain Lodge, like it's a hardcore treatment center. And I'm like, I want to go there because I know, you know, deep down I knew I needed hardcore. I needed somebody to yell at me because I had been manipulating my way through life for so long that I needed that strictness. And so yeah, I chose Pine Lodge, and I'm so grateful that I did, because when I came out of there, when I went in there really cocky, like I've been staying sober for, you know, 4 months. I don't really need this. Like I'm good. I got this. And when I left, I had fear. You know, I had fear that if I went back out, I was gonna die. And Pine Lodge gave me that, you know, that knowledge that the things in the past don't need to define my future. They don't need to define me. The trauma that I went through, it doesn't need to define it. It doesn't need to take my power away, right? I forgave my abusers, not for them. Never for them. I forgave them for me so that I could move on. I burned it out there. You know, I burned them out there. I came out, and it was still like 30 days wasn't enough for me. I needed longer than that. And, you know, and that's where drug court picked it up and kept going with it. The 12-step programs helped me. I ended up graduating there with I never once relapsed. And then I moved out here to Moose Jaw. And so when I moved out here, I thought it was a great idea. My boyfriend was out here. Let's move in together. All this stuff. The crazy thing is like, I remember when I was sitting in Pine Grove, and I was like, how did I screw my life up this bad? Like, I'm never going to go anywhere. My track 3, they have 3 tracks in drug court, and my track 3 plan was to attend university, right? And today last June, I completed that. Which is crazy. I have my business certificate, and I didn't think that was possible. Anyway, so I moved out to Moose Jaw, still in university. I had no support system here, and I looked into it. I was like, is there sober living here? No. There's an addictions counselor, but I already had a great addictions counselor, so I didn't want to switch. I couldn't find any programming for me because, I wasn't technically in the court system anymore. So I came out here, and I looked for the 12-step programs out here, and I found them. And the thing is when I first moved out here, because it's such a culture shock, I didn't really care for them, and I was like, I was gonna quit my main support, right? And someone told me, if you don't like something, if you don't like the way something is, be the change, be a part of the solution, change it. And, so that's what I did. And I've opened up 4 meetings now here. And, I founded a women's group. We call it Speak Out. It's for trauma victims. It's any type of trauma, grief, loss, sexual abuse, physical abuse. And, I'm really proud of that group because it's something that we really need here for us ladies. I moved out here, and I really tried. I remember there was a point, my boyfriend had relapsed, and there was a point where I'm like, well, screw it, I should just go back out and start using. And it's the therapeutic value of an addict helping another addict. I had a detox date. I was supposed to go to detox and share my story there, and I stayed clean because of that. I was like, okay, I'll just stay clean till after this, and then I can go out and use. And I went there, and it was like that value of having somebody else in the room. I told my story there, and this other girl came up to me and told me, me too. So just like how my counselor had done it for me, I was able to do that for another girl there, and she told me about a similar story about her sexual abuse, and it was like, no, I can't go back out and use. I need to help these people. And I think it's just so important for people to stand up and, say the Me Too movement is great. I think that people need to stand up and say, I suffer with anxiety, I suffer with depression, I suffer with addictions, I've been sexually abused. I need to hear people's stories so that I have hope. And, people need to hear my story so that they have hope. I think that our community support's really lacking. This isn't just Moose Jaw, this is everywhere. When I came here, you know, it's like a puzzle. Like I always say, mental health is like a puzzle, and all the pieces need to fit together. And, you know, for me, why drug court worked is because I had that safe home while I was taking programming to change. Because, you know, people always say, well, you have a good home, you know, you come from a good home, so just quit, just stay sober, just quit. And it's not easy. Like it's a problem with the way I think. So it's not as easy as just quitting, right? I needed that programming. Unfortunately, though, for a lot of people, like a lot of people say, how do I get the help you did? Well, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to go commit a crime to get the help I did, which is stupid, right? Like, why can't we get that help without having to do crime? I think, well, that's why I'm really proud to be a part of Square One and what they're trying to do, because programming and a safe home are so key. Like, you can't even get a lot of people say, well, just go get a job. Well, it's not that easy if you don't have a place to go and shower and sleep. Like, it's not that easy. I've tried it. You know, as soon as I was kicked out of that shelter, I couldn't keep my job.